Older people may be in serious trouble. I met a guy last week at a diner, 67 years old, wearing a name tag that said trainee. He was learning how to work the cash register. Not because he was bored, not because he missed the social interaction, because his 401k ran dry in year 3 of retirement and Social Security pays him $1,200 a month while his rent alone is $1,400. He looked at me when I paid and said, "I thought I did everything right." And you know what? He probably did. That's the problem. The system told him to save 10%, max out his company match, trust the market, and everything would work out. Except it didn't. Because here's what nobody wants to admit. We turned an entire generation into guinea pigs for an economic experiment that failed. And now millions of people are standing at the edge of their 60s, staring into a financial void they didn't create but have to survive anyway. I'm going to explain how we got here, why the standard retirement advice was always broken, and what the actual incentive structures were that made this inevitable. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Think of retirement planning like building a bridge. You're standing on one side, which is your working years, and you need to get to the other side, which is the rest of your life without a paycheck. The bridge is supposed to be built from 3 materials: Social Security, your 401k or pension, and personal savings. Now, imagine you're told your whole life that these 3 materials are strong enough to hold you. You trust the engineers, you follow the blueprint. Then you step onto the bridge at age 65 and it starts cracking under your feet. That's where we are. Let me show you how the cracks formed. The first crack is Social Security, and it's not what you think. See, everyone talks about Social Security like it's going bankrupt, like it's some ticking time bomb. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is that Social Security was never designed to be a primary income source. When it was created back in the 30s, it was supposed to supplement your pension and savings. The average life expectancy back then was 61 for men. Social Security kicked in at 65. Most people never even collected it. It was insurance against the statistical outliers who lived too long. Fast forward to 2026, and people are living into their 80s and 90s. Social Security is now funding 20, 30 years of life, but the benefit amount, it hasn't scaled. The average monthly check is around $1,700. Try living on that. Really try. Rent, food, utilities, medical costs that increase every single year. You can't. And here's the kicker. The system knows you can't. It was never recalibrated because fixing it would mean raising taxes or cutting benefits, and neither party wants to touch that political landmine. So instead, we pretend it's fine and act surprised when people can't survive on it. Now you might be thinking, okay, but that's why we have 401ks, right? That's the second material in the bridge. Here's where it gets really interesting. The 401k was introduced in 1978, and it was never meant to replace pensions. It was a tax loophole for executives, a way to defer income. But corporations looked at it and saw something beautiful, a way to transfer all the risk of retirement from them to you. See, with a pension, the company was on the hook. They had to fund it. They had to manage it. If the market crashed, that was their problem. If people lived longer than expected, their problem. But with a 401k, all of that risk shifts to the worker. You decide how much to contribute. You decide how to invest it. If the market tanks the year you retire, like it did in 2008, well, tough luck. You're the one eating cat food, not the CEO. And here's the thing nobody tells you. The average person is terrible at investing. Not because they're dumb, because they're human. They panic when the market drops. They chase returns when things are hot. They don't rebalance. They pay fees they don't understand. I saw a study from Boston College that found the median 401k balance for people aged 55 to 64 is around $93,000. $93,000. You know what that generates in safe retirement income? Maybe $4,000 a year using the 4% rule. Add that to Social Security and you're looking at maybe $25,000 a year total. That's below the poverty line for a single person in most cities. But wait, it gets worse because the third material in that bridge, personal savings, completely evaporated. Back in the 80s and 90s, people could still save. Housing was affordable. College was affordable. Healthcare costs weren't insane. But starting in the 2000s, everything changed. Wages stagnated while costs exploded. The median home price went from $120,000 in 2000 to over $400,000 by 2024. College tuition tripled. Healthcare costs doubled. People weren't failing to save because they were irresponsible. They were failing to save because there was nothing left to save after covering basic necessities. The money just wasn't there. I talked to a woman named Carol, retired teacher, 30 years in the system. She had a pension, which sounds great until you realize it pays her $28,000 a year. Her pension hadn't gotten a cost of living adjustment in 12 years. Meanwhile, her property taxes tripled, her Medicare supplement premiums doubled, and her prescription costs went from $60 a month to $300. She did everything right, worked her whole life, never lived extravagantly. And now she's trying to figure out if she can afford to keep her house or if she needs to move into her daughter's basement. She told me, "I feel like I'm being punished for getting old." And she's right. Here's the part where most people get angry at boomers. They say, well, you voted for the politicians who cut taxes and deregulated everything. You bought into the free market fantasy. This is your fault. And look, there's some truth there. But here's what that analysis misses: the incentive structure. The people making these decisions, the politicians, the corporate executives, the financial advisors, they all had one thing in common. They weren't personally at risk. Congressmen have government pensions. CEOs have golden parachutes. Financial advisors make money whether your portfolio goes up or down because they charge fees on assets under management. Nobody with power has skin in the game. So, of course, the system was designed to benefit them at your expense. That's not a conspiracy. That's just how incentives work. Let me give you a concrete example with numbers, because this is where it really crystallizes. Imagine two people, both born in 1958, so they're 68 now in 2026. Person A followed all the traditional advice, saved 10% of their income into a 401k. Let's say they made $60,000 a year on average. Over 40 years of work, they contributed about $240,000 of their own money. With employer match, maybe it's $320,000. Assuming a 7% average annual return, which is optimistic, but let's be generous, that grows to about $1.2 million. Sounds great, right? Except they retired in January of 2022. The S&P 500 dropped 25% that year. Their balance went from $1.2 million to $900,000. Now they're trying to withdraw $48,000 a year using the 4% rule, but the market's down, so they're selling at a loss, which means their money runs out faster. By 2026, they're at $700,000 and panicking. Meanwhile, Person B is a former member of Congress who served 3 terms. Their pension? $105,000 a year, guaranteed for life with cost of living adjustments. They also qualify for the same Social Security benefits. Who designed the better system for themselves? That's not an accident. That's the incentive structure. Now, here's where everyone says, okay, but what about personal responsibility? People should have saved more, lived below their means, been more disciplined, and sure, in an ideal world, everyone would be a perfect rational actor who maxes out their 401k, lives frugally, invests wisely, and plans 30 years ahead. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world where marketing budgets are in the trillions, where consumer debt is encouraged by every major corporation, where lifestyle inflation is baked into the culture, and where wages haven't kept pace with productivity since the 70s. Blaming individuals for systemic failures is like blaming someone for drowning when you push them into the ocean. Let me tell you about my neighbor, Frank. Worked in manufacturing his whole life. Good job, union shop, decent pay. He saved what he could. Not a lot, but something. Then in 2009, his plant closed. He was 54. Too young to retire, too old to easily find another job at the same pay. He took a job at a hardware store making half what he used to. His 401k from the plant was worth $110,000. He needed it to survive the income drop, so he pulled $40,000 out, took the penalty, paid the taxes, and used it to bridge the gap until Social Security. Now he's 71. working part-time at that same hardware store because his 401k ran out. And Social Security plus the little bit he gets from the union pension isn't enough. He didn't fail. The system failed him. The plant closed because the company moved production to Mexico for cheaper labor. That wasn't Frank's choice. That was a boardroom decision made by people who got bonuses for cutting costs. And this is the thing I keep coming back to. The people who designed this system, who sold it to the public, who promised it would work, they're fine. The politicians who pushed 401ks as the solution to expensive pensions, they have pensions. The financial advisors who said just put it in index funds and you'll be fine, they made commissions every step of the way. The corporations that eliminated pensions to cut costs, the executives got raises. The only people who lost in this deal are the people who actually have to live on the other side of the bridge. Now you're asking yourself, is there any way out of this? Here's the uncomfortable truth. For a lot of people, no. If you're 65 with $50,000 in savings, there's no magic trick that turns that into a secure retirement. The math doesn't work. You're going to have to make hard choices. Work longer, downsize your life, move to a cheaper area, maybe move in with family. It's not fair, it's not right, but it's reality. But here's what you can do, and this is where it actually matters. First, be ruthlessly honest about your numbers. Not what you hope you have, not what you think you might have if the market does well. What you actually have right now, today. Run the calculation. Take your total savings, multiply by 4%. That's your safe annual income from savings. Add Social Security. That's your real retirement budget. If that number is less than your current spending, you have a gap. You need to either close the gap by saving more now, or you need to adjust your expectations about retirement. Second, delay Social Security as long as you possibly can. Every year you wait past your full retirement age until 70, your benefit increases by 8%. That's a guaranteed 8% return, which you can't get anywhere else without serious risk. If you can work until 70, even part-time, and delay claiming, your lifetime benefit can be 30% higher. That's real money. Third, and this is the one people hate, consider that retirement as a concept might need to change. The idea that you work 40 years, then stop completely, was invented in a specific economic moment that doesn't exist anymore. For most of human history, people worked until they couldn't. They slowed down, sure, but they didn't just stop. Maybe that's the model we need to return to. Not because it's ideal, but because it's realistic. Find something you can do that generates income that's less demanding than what you did for 40 years. Consulting, part-time work, a small business, something. Because hoping the system fixes itself is not a plan. Look, I'm not trying to be nihilistic here, but I am trying to be honest. The retirement system in America is fundamentally broken for most people. It was designed by people who didn't have to live with the consequences of its failures. And now millions of people are discovering that the bridge they were promised turns out to be made of balsa wood and wishful thinking. You can be angry about it. You should be angry about it. But anger doesn't pay the bills. The only way forward is to see the system for what it actually is, not what it was supposed to be, and make decisions based on reality, not promises. Because the people who made those promises already got paid. You're the one left holding the bill.